ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजाता सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादा सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण कृष्णाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नित्यनामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Welcome all of you for Tuesday evening Bhagavad Gita class. I think we are going to discuss this on Dhyana Yoga. This is the third part of Dhyana Yoga. Earlier, Shrikant Bhatt Prabhu and Baladevan Prabhu have given the class. But I think for getting the thing streamlined, for my own reason, I would like to do some little recap. It could be some sort of repetition for some of you. But I think hearing Bhagavad Gita in a number of times is welcome, I suppose. And then still we don't understand it. So I am one of those persons who don't understand Bhagavad Gita so well. But anyway, Ramdayal Prabhu has given the opportunity, so I must make use of it. So let me start doing some recap. See, in chapter 5, Krishna explained how to achieve the liberation through Nishkama Karma Yoga. And at the end of the chapter, he explained how to achieve that same liberation through Ashtanga Yoga. So now in this chapter, the method of controlling the fickle mind achieved by the yogi who has controlled the senses through the process of Ashtanga Yoga is described. It is actually a means to control the mind and the senses. However, although Ashtanga Yoga is recommended, Lord emphasizes here in this chapter that Karma Yoga or acting in Krishna consciousness is better than Ashtanga Yoga because it is very difficult for the people in general to perform, especially in the age of Kali. So, section 1 deals with advancing in yoga through detached work, verses 1 to 4. So, I'm not going to read the verse, I'll just give a brief recap. In 6.1, Krishna says, a true mystic yogi is a true sannyasi. A true mystic yogi or a true sannyasi is one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as is obligated. If he is obliged to do something, he has to work. Now they are considered to be in the renounced order of life and not one who lights no fire and perform no duty. This is the translation of the verse 6.1. Although one who takes sannyasa ordinarily gives up performing fire sacrifices, here for the third time Krishna asserts the importance of giving up work. Sorry. Yeah. The true renunciant, the true mystic, performs his duty but renounces the fruit. So he does not renounce the duty, but he renounces the fruit. That is what the Krishna's request to Arjuna also. He says, do your duty and don't worry about the result. I am there to take care of the whole war. In fact, he says, I already killed somebody. You have to only do your duty of fighting the war. Now, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura says, in commencing the practice of Karma Yoga, one should not suddenly give up Nishkama Karma Yoga, which purifies the heart. Nishkama Karma Yoga means what? Without any desire or desire on the result, you are doing your duty as has been dictated by the Shastras. So this purifies one's heart. He who performs actions prescribed by the scripture as inescapable duty without expectation of results is called sannyasa, since he renounces the results of his action. He is called a yogi because his mind does not dwell on the enjoyment of objects of the senses. A person who merely renounces duties such as fire sacrifice is not called a sannyasa. Nor is the one merely who closes eyes without any external body activity is called a yogi. So they cannot renounce their duties, what has been already obligated on them. So that duty they have to perform, even in Ashtanga Yoga. Prabhupada, at least when you start, Prabhupada in his purport says, everyone in this world is working for personal self-interest, be it concentrated or extended. Concentrated means your own self, extended maybe your family or friends, etc. So even sannyasis and mystic yogis are also self-interested. He says sannyasis are always seeking oneness with the supreme impersonal Brahman, desiring liberation. And they cease to perform their prescribed duties like Agnihotra Yajnas, etc. Mystic yogis also seek some satisfaction for their personal self by aspiring for mystic perfections, that is siddhis. So, by the criteria, but the criteria of perfection is to act in Krishna consciousness and not with a view to enjoy the fruits of one's work. The limbs of our body, as parts and parcel of the whole body, are supposed to serve the body, whole body. Similarly, Krishna consciousness is the duty of all living entities, and they being parts and parcel of Krishna, we should serve Krishna. Therefore, the perfect sannyasi or the perfect yogi means only those who work for the satisfaction of Krishna without any self-interest. The conclusion is that the Krishna conscious devotee is the most perfect and a true sannyasi or yogi. Example is Lord Chaitanya prays in his place for devotional service as the ultimate perfection in Ch.6. Says Nadhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamaye mama janmani shure bhavathat bhaktirahit. Says, O Almighty God, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. So Krishna repeats this point, that is, importance of not giving up work just before describing the Ashtanga yoga system, so that we will not become confused. The Ashtanga yogis must perform detached work before they are advanced enough to renounce the world. So they cannot renounce things unless they become perfect. Now in the next verse, Krishna says, he will explain the relationship between sannyasa and yoga. He says, renunciation is nothing but yoga or linking oneself with the Supreme. For one can never become a yogi or can link himself with the Supreme unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. Prabhupada says in his purports that real sannyasa yoga or bhakti implies knowledge of one's constitutional position as a living entity and acting accordingly. What is the constitutional position of the living entity? One, he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and therefore he has no separate identity. We are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we are Atma, he is Paramatma. So we don't have a separate identity. And he is the marginal energy of the Supreme. The other energies are internal energy and external energy. So we are the marginal energy. And therefore, and number three, he is in a conditioned state, having been entrapped by material energy. Maya has entrapped us. We are always subject to three modes of material nature. And the fourth one is, his natural state of life is when Krishna consciousness, he is aware of, he is Krishna conscious or aware of the spiritual energy. So we are the servants of Krishna. Our constitutional position is to be servants and always looking up to Krishna for everything. He is the master. The living entity is in complete knowledge when he ceases all sense gratificatory activities and acts according to his constitutional position. Yogis achieve this stage of complete knowledge by restraining senses from material attachment. But devotees achieve this stage simply by engaging in senses in Krishna, as they have no opportunity to engage their senses in anything which is not for the purpose of Krishna. So devotees find it very easy. Restraining the senses, which yogis do, is not only is not the only constituent in true renunciation of sense gratification. Even the desire for sense gratification must be renounced, because we have heard in Nectar of Instructions, it's like atonement is just like elephant taking bath and then again spreading mud all over his body. So we must come out of our desire for sense gratification. The desire itself should go out. We have already seen in Karma Yoga and Sankhya Yoga. Karma Yoga and Sankhya Yoga are the same. That is Jnana Yoga are the same. In that they lead to the same goal, because both of them, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, lead to the same goal. Now Krishna says sannyasa or renunciation is the same as yoga. That is linking oneself with the Supreme, which means that every yogi must be renounced. Just all sannyasis are renounced. Both of them reject the desire for enjoyment. Therefore, Prabhupada repeats here, Krishna conscious person is simultaneously a perfect sannyasi and yogi. And also that bhakti includes the purpose of jnana. Jnana means knowledge of one's constitutional position and acting accordingly. When he ceases all sense gratificatory activities. And yoga, controlling of senses. All purposes are perfectly served by the practice of Krishna consciousness. The next verse, 6.3, says, for one who is a neophyte in Ashtanga Yoga system, work is said to be the means, and for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. Krishna now explains that yoga process is divided into two levels. What does this mean? This means that in the beginning stage, which is called the yoga ruruksha stage, the sadhaka should continue to perform his activities, to gradually give up the desire to enjoy the fruit of his activities. And as he achieves the freedom from desires, that impel fruitive work, which is called the Yogarudha stage. When Pratyahara is perfect, you start feeling that you are advancing. And at that stage, one should retire from the active duties for contemplation and meditation. So there are two levels of Ashtanga Yoga practice. That is Yogarudha stage and Yogarudha stage. Now in Ashtanga Yoga, there are 8 angas, as you know. As the name suggests, Ashtanga means 8 angas. First is Yama. Yama means control of senses. That is prohibitions. There are so many prohibitions. There are 5 prohibitions. We don't go into the details. And secondly, Niyama. There are 5 Niyamas. Strict following of rules and regulations. There are strict rules to be followed. And third is Asana. Practice of different sitting postures. And the fourth is Pranayama, control of breath. And today's yoga system, today's yoga means only this, asana and postures, asana and pranayama. It is actually exercise, it is not yoga. It is not connecting you to the Supreme. It is only to take care of your health. So it can be considered as an exercise. But actually these postures and pranayama are preliminary steps towards the further steps. Thereafter comes the 5th is Pratyahara, withdrawing senses from sense objects. So this is very important and it's very difficult too. When the practitioner is able to turn his mind to introspection by voluntarily shutting out distractions provided by the senses. Very difficult, but this has to be gone through. When he becomes detached, he practices the 6th anga, that is dharana. Dharana is connection of the mind, concentration of the mind. And when the 7th dhyana, 7th limb is dhyana, there are different intensities of meditation, which leads to the final stage, that is the 8th one, that is samadhi. Samadhi is self-realization, when the mind and the consciousness are fully focused on the absolute. So different transcendentalists attain different kinds of samadhi. The jnanis focus on Brahman, the Patanjali yogis on Paramatma, and the Bhakti yogis on Krishna or Bhagavan. After this self-realization, there are furthermore 8 perfection stages, which will not go into. One at the beginning, that is Yoga Rurukshu stage, must work. As I said earlier, he is neither detached enough nor pure enough to renounce work. One can renounce work only at the advanced stage, that is Yoga. So he should continue to work. Yoga is a process of linking oneself with the Supreme. It is compared to a ladder. It begins from the lowest condition of a living entity to topmost spiritual realization. The complete ladder is called yoga. It is divided into 3 parts, namely Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti. Krishna consciousness, however, situates one on the platform of meditation in the beginning itself. Because in this Ashtanga Yoga, meditation starts after Pratyahara. Dhyana comes after Pratyahara. It starts after that. So all preliminary steps have to be followed beforehand. But in the case of Krishna consciousness, one is situated in the platform of meditation at the beginning itself. The devotee is always thinking of Krishna. He is constantly engaged in Krishna's service and he has voluntarily given up all activities. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura answers a question which somebody is asking. How long should the Ashtanga yogi perform his prescribed duties? Does he have to do it as long as he lives? So he says that in this verse prescribes how in the Yoga Ruruksha beginning stage one works in Nishkam Karma Yoga while simultaneously practicing Ashtanga Yoga. That purifies his heart. When the aspiring yogi becomes elevated in his practice, the point of Yogarudha, he gives up Nishkama Karma Yoga and practices Ashtanga Yoga exclusively. So he doesn't have to start, he has to stop at a particular point of time, the Nishkama Karma Yoga. Baldevam Vidyabhushan adds, this Yogarudha stage begins at Dhyana, which is described in the next verse. 6.4, we actually are supposed to start from here. So far we just did the prelude. So I will just read out this 6.4. Yeah. Yada hi nindriyateshu na karma swanushajate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudha duchyate. So the translation is, a person is said to be elevated in yoga when, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. Achugopal Prabhu is actually reading word to word, so I will also read. Yada means when, he certainly, na not, indriya artheshu in sense gratification, na never, karmeshu in fruitive activities, anusajjate one necessarily engages, sarva sankalpa of all material desires, sannyasi renouncer, yoga druda elevated in yoga, tada at that time, uchyate is said to be. A person is said to be elevated in yoga when, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. So this verse speaks of characteristics of a person who has attained the steady meditation, that is Yogarudha stage. One who has a completely pure heart. In later stages of Ashtanga Yoga, when the practitioner is completely purified, he can also give up the work itself. This is the stage when one renounces all material desires and neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. He is not attached to either to sense objects such as sound, nor to actions for attaining enjoyment of the objects of senses. Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada says, fulfills all the criteria of Yogarudha stage. By engaging oneself in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord, one is always pleased in himself and is no longer engaged in sense gratification. Krishna conscious person does everything for Krishna's satisfaction, which in turn gives him complete satisfaction. And thus, there is no need for him to engage in some other kind of sense gratification. Because when we satisfy the Supreme Lord keeps us happy. He satisfies us. So there is no need to do anything else other than that. So he says it fulfills the criteria of Yogarudha stage by engaging ourselves in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. So we ourselves get pleased by doing that. Without Krishna consciousness, because senses always need to be engaged, they automatically are engaged in sense gratification. One is always seeking self-centered or extended selfish activities. To practice Ashtanga Yoga without realization of Krishna, which is the case of the practitioner of Ashtanga Yoga, implies that one must mechanically try to escape material miseries before being elevated to the top rung of yoga ladder. Those initial stages before Pratyahara. Before Pratyahara, we have to do a lot of other things. Yama, Niyama, sadhana, etc., etc. So, in this case, we don't have to do anything. If you don't engage our senses in Krishna, it will have to be engaged somewhere else, because the senses, the mind cannot keep quiet. It has got to be engaged somewhere else. So if you left to ourselves, if we don't control our senses, it will be automatically going for sense gratification area only. It will be always seeking the selfish activities. Now we go to the next section, that is the Yogarudha stage, giving up work. 6.5. Udharetmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhuratmaiva repuratmanah. There are so many atmas here. So one must deliver himself. No, I will read the word to word. Udharet, one must deliver. Atmana, by the mind. Atmanam, the conditioned soul. Na, never. Atmanam, the conditioned soul. Avasadayet, put into degradation. Atma, mind. Eva, certainly. He, indeed. Atmana, of the conditioned soul. Bandhu, friend. Atma, mind. Eva, certainly. Ripu, enemy. Atmana, of the conditioned soul. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. Now, mind is such an important thing. There are 8 separated energies. Earth, water, all those 5 elements, and mind, intelligence and falsity. Everything that we do, everything that we hear, influences our mind. So if the mind is not used for a proper purpose, it will degrade yourself. If the mind is used to uddharet, if you raise yourself, it will raise. So choice is ours. So non-attention to self-objects and mind control, these are the 2 prerequisites to come to Yogarudha stage. Importance of mind control is focused now in verse 6.5 and 6.6. And symptoms of a person with a controlled mind on the Yogarudha advanced stage are discussed in 6.7 to 6.9. Now we shall see 6.5 and 6.6 together. Because Krishna says in 6.5, one must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. So in 6.6 he says, for him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain greatest enemy. So we will read 6.6 also. Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmanajitaha anatmanastu shastrutve vate tatmaya shatruvat. Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmanajitaha anatmanastu shatrutve vate tatmaya shatruvat. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greater enemy. So this we already read. So the controlled mind, as a friend, follows the dictation of super soul. Because we'll be only thinking of, with the controlled mind, we'll be only thinking of the Supreme Lord. So, and then Paramatma is in our heart. So we'll be only thinking of following the dictation of the super soul. It is detached from the sense gratification. As a result, it elevates us. Whereas the uncontrolled mind as an enemy follows the dictation of lust, anger, and illusion. Because we will be only going for sense gratification. It is attached to sense gratification. As a result, it degrades us and entangles us. In what happens even in ISKCON also, we have seen some of us are considered to be little senior devotees, but even we are not out of it. Everybody is not like Baldevan Prabhu, who thinks that he and ISKCON, there is no difference. Whatever he does is for ISKCON, and whatever ISKCON does is for ISKCON. So many times we think that we do so much, we collect money, we give donation, we give land. Still, many times we are not consulted. So this kind of a feeling comes even in senior devotees. But then, if you focus your mind on such feelings, you are only getting into dictation of lust, anger, and illusion. So if you think that I am Krishna's servant, whatever I do is for his pleasure, and I would like to do more and more of it. So your mind follows the dictation of the super soul, the Paramatma. So even amongst the senior devotees, you will find this kind of problems. Probably I am one of them. In verse 6.5, Atma is used in the sense of mind. Atma can mean many things, three things: body, mind, and soul. Depending upon the different circumstances, we interpret the meaning. In the context of yoga system, it can refer to mind or conditioned soul. Because the purpose of yoga practice is control of mind, we have to assign the meaning of mind here. And mind control is attained through yoga to draw the mind away from sense objects and to make it a friend in discharging the mission of sense control. And this must be done. Mind control must be done. That is why Krishna has used the word he to emphasize the point. Without mind control, yoga is simply a waste of time. But why the mind has to be controlled? The answer is, if we do not control our mind, we will always be living with the greatest enemy, that is mind. And as a conditioned souls, we cannot be delivered from the complicated or unpleasant situation of material existence, nations. This is not the situation one would like to be in, because that spoils one's life and his mission. What is a complicated situation in material existence? We think, when we ask this question, we think we are happy, we are healthy, we get what we want, we are able to enjoy life. So what is the problem? So the answer is, pure soul, entangled material world under the influence of mind and senses, because mind is involved with the false ego, which desires to lord over the material nature. This is a problem. Mind is so close to false ego, as I gave in the ISKCON example and senior devotees example. Many times we are touched by the false ego. In fact, we get into false ego. If you are not in the right frame of mind, if you are not in Krishna consciousness, the false ego immediately touches us. False ego immediately occurs in our mind, and that leads us to so many other problems. Therefore, mind should be trained so that it will not be attracted by the glitter of material nature. This is the only way to save the conditioned soul. Otherwise, it will be degraded by attraction to sense objects. The more one is attracted by sense objects, the more one becomes entangled in material existence. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura says, since the soul has fallen into the well of samsara by attachment to objects of senses, with effort one should deliver that soul. One should deliver the soul, Atmanam, by the mind, Atmana, which is devoid of attachment to objects of senses. One should not let the soul fall into the well of samsara by a mind which is attached to sense objects. Therefore, the mind is both a friend and enemy. The mind is whose friend and whose enemy? Question, verse number 6.6 answers this. The mind is a friend. Mind, Atma, is a friend, causing benefit to that jiva who has conquered the mind. The mind acts as an enemy, causing harm to that jiva who does not control the mind, Atmana. Prabhupada quotes here a verse from Amrita Bindu Upanishad, which says, mind attached to sense object is the cause of bondage, and mind attached to sense object is the cause of liberation. The best way to discharge mind is to always engage mind in Krishna consciousness. The constitutional position of the living entity is to carry out the order of the superior. Unconquered mind has to serve the dictation of lust, anger, and avarice, that is, greed for wealth and material gain, illusion, etc. But when the mind is conquered, one voluntarily agrees to abide by the dictations of the personality of Godhead, who is situated within the heart of everyone as Paramatma. The real yoga practice entails meeting Paramatma in the heart and following his dictation. This is the yoga practice. This is what so much of effort is put in. For one who has taken to Krishna consciousness directly, this happens automatically. So in the next 3 verses, Krishna describes the symptoms of a person with uncontrolled mind on Yogarudha, advanced platform. So 6.7. Jitatmana prashantasya paramatma samahita shitoshna sukha dukkeshu tata manapamana yoha. For one who has conquered, Jitatmana, of one who has conquered his mind. Prashantasya, who has attained tranquility by such control over the mind. Paramatma, the super soul. Samahitaha, approached completely. Shita, in cold. Ushna, heat. Sukha, happiness. Dukkheshu, and distress. Tata, also. Mana, in honor. Apamanaha, and dishonor. For one who has conquered his mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all same. Again, Vishwanath Chakravarti says, Thakura says, he translates like this: the yogi who has controlled the mind, Jitat Atmana, who is devoid of attachment to objects, Prashantasya, has his soul completely situated in samadhi, in all conditions of duality, heat and cold, happiness and distress, respect and disrespect. You'll see, heat and cold is something which is affecting the body. Happiness and distress is something which is affecting your mind. Respect and disrespect, falsing. So all 3 things are covered here: mind, body, mind, and falsing. Prabhupada says, the intended goal for every living entity is to abide by the dictation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. When the mind is misled by the external illusory energy, one becomes entangled in material activities, and thus he deviates from the goal, that is, to abide by the dictation of the law. The solution to avoid such deviation is that the mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. When the mind is thus fixed on the superior nature, he has no alternative but to follow the dictations of the Supreme. Therefore, the effect of controlling the mind is that one automatically follows the dictation of Paramatma. Now 6.8. 6.8. Jnana vijnana triptatma kutasto vijatendriyaha yukta ichutte yogi sumalosta shmakanchanaha. So jnana, the acquired knowledge, by acquired knowledge, vijnana, the realized knowledge, tripta, satisfied, Atma, a living entity, Kutastha, spiritually situated, Vijita Indriya, sensually controlled, Yukta, competent or self-realization, for self-realization, Iti, thus, Uchyate is said, Yogi, a mystic, Sama, equipoised, Lostra, pebbles, Asma, stone, Kanchana, gold. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold. So, a person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi. This we read. His mind is tapta, satisfied. By what he is satisfied? He is satisfied by his jnana and vijnana. Jnana is knowledge, vijnana is realization. Maintaining a satisfied mood is not easy because the mind tends to be whimsical. Kutastha means one is fixed or spiritually elevated before the mind gives up sense gratification and is able to be satisfied by jnana and vijnana. It may have to be beaten, just as blacksmith beats metal on an anvil. One who has thus brought his mind under full control is eligible to give up Nishkama Karma Yoga, sit down and meditate. Bhagavad Gita is a science of Krishna consciousness. No one can become Krishna conscious or understand Bhagavad Gita simply by mundane scholarship. Prabhupada says, one must be fortunate enough to associate with a person who is in pure consciousness, and that is the real fortune. A Krishna conscious person is a realized soul. He is satisfied with devotional service, and therefore he has realized knowledge. By the grace of Krishna, he is steadily in convictions by strength of his realized knowledge. By mere academic knowledge, one can be easily deluded and confused by apparent contradictions. He is self-controlled by the strength of his realized knowledge. Mundane scholarship and mental speculation are gold to others, are as good as pebbles or stones. Now here he is giving the examples, pebbles, stones, and kanchana, gold. Pebbles is very small pieces of stones, and stones are little bigger, maybe useful. Pebbles are not useful at all. Very insignificant thing. Stones are maybe slightly better, maybe a little more useful. And it can be used in construction activities, etc. So people might go for it. Now, Kanchana is something very, very, very important metal. Yeah, the precious stone. So a person who is in Yogarudha stage, he doesn't differentiate between different materials. For him, every material is same. It doesn't matter to him. So this is the meaning of that. So in 6.9, we'll read 6.9. Suhradan mitrar yudasi dasinam adhyasta desha bandhushu sadhushtapi cha papeshu samabuddhir vishishyate suhran mitrarya dasinam adhyasta desha bandhushu sadhushtapi cha papeshu samabuddhir vishishyate. So, Suhrad, to well-wishers by nature, Mitra, beneficiaries with affection. Ari, enemies. Udasina, neutrals between belligerents. Madhyastha, mediators between belligerents. Dvesha, the envious. Bandhusu, and the relatives and well-wishers. Sadhushu, unto the pious. Api, as well as. Cha, Papeshu, unto the sinners. Samabuddhi, having equal intelligence. Vishishyate, is far advanced. So a person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral, mediators, the envious, friends and enemies, the pious and sinners, all with the same equal mind. So the earlier one we saw materials, he was little advanced, but here we are seeing super advanced. So this verse describes the most advanced stage of the Yogarudha platform. It is difficult for even a great sage to give up family attachment. Yet Krishna recommends Samabuddhi. The yogi must be equal to family members, friends, and enemies. We tend to consider someone who appreciates us as a man of good discrimination, but view one who does not as envious. If somebody appreciates us, we say, oh, he's a man of good discrimination. But if somebody who does not do that, he criticizes us, we say he's envious. In this sense, Suhrat means a person who, by his natural qualities, acts for one's benefit or a well-wisher. Mitra means a friend or a person who acts for one's benefit out of affection. Ari means an enemy or killer. Udasina refers to one who is neutral in times of conflict or honor. A Madhyastha is an impartial judge, concerned, but neutrally meditating between the two sides or warring factions. Dvesha means a person who deserves hatred because he harms none. He harms because he harms one. Bandhu means a relative. How can we see all such persons equally? It is more difficult to see these persons equally than to equally view pebbles, stones, or gold. We can see those pebbles, stones, or gold as equal, but it is difficult to see all these people equals. If one is able to achieve this platform, however, his meditation becomes uninterrupted. This is the supermost stage where he sees everybody, all, a good person, a neutral person, a friend, a enemy, a neutral in times of conflict or honor, Madhyastha, mediator, and person who has to be hated. Yeah, everybody, and Bandhu, relatives, everybody should be seen as Sama. So it is more difficult to see these persons equally generally. So unless he is such a advanced devotee, if one is able to achieve this platform, however, his meditation becomes uninterrupted. So we have finished section 2, 5 to 9. So with that, we close. Any questions? I will try to answer. Hare Krishna. Any comments, any suggestions?
Hare Krishna, Dandabraji.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu.
You have done very beautiful, Prabhu. You covered most of the delegate part you covered actually.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Practical.
You are